Hi there. How was your break? Good? Did you get to visit your friend? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So happy to hear that. It's really nice to have time off for yourself and to spend time with friends. Um, so how is your English work going? Okay. Well, let's take a look at today's lesson together. So, it looks like you're reading an excerpt from this book, The Sum of Small Things, by sociologist Elizabeth Currid Halkett. And it's a nonfiction book about status symbols and class signifiers in modern America. Are you enjoying it? That's okay. I know sometimes nonfiction can be tricky, but it's nice because it also offers us a new perspective on things, no? So let's talk about our goals for today's lesson. What I would like to accomplish is I would like to clarify some vocabulary words, because there are quite a bit, I think, in this text. I would like to summarize some key concepts and also answer some of the multiple choice questions that you have for homework. How does that sound? Okay, good. Is there anything else that you'd like to put on the table today? Okay, great. So let's take a look at this together. We'll start in chapter 3, where Currid Halkett identifies some key concepts relating to consumption or the purchasing of goods and what they symbolize, what they do, what they mean. But before we start talking about those key concepts, let's talk about vocabulary. Yeah, I bet there are some new vocabulary words in this section, and some words that may be unfamiliar to us, but I also bet with some context clues, we can figure out their meaning together. There are also a lot of words and phrases in this text that Currid Halkett puts together herself and creates and defines for herself. So we'll be sure to do that as well, so that we can start getting into the author's own vocabulary. Yeah. So there are 3 words that I would like to take a look at today for vocab. And you can also let me know if there are other words in the text that you got stuck on. But these are the 3 that I would really need in order to best understand this text. The first one is inconspicuous consumption, which is everywhere in this text, right? The second is meritocracy, which, yes, okay, you may have heard before, but we're definitely going to define it for this text. And then the third word that I found was bifurcated. Yeah, that was also, it's a new word for sure. It's a new word for sure. So let's get these definitions going. Is there anywhere in the text where you see a definition for inconspicuous consumption? Right, exactly. We can pull it right from the text. So in the bottom of page 49, in the second paragraph, there's this definition. The paragraph starts with, the rise in inconspicuous consumption is a result of 3 important trends. Great. Okay, and can you read that definition for me? Okay, so I'll write down what you already said. You just said inconspicuous consumption, but a little bit of a tongue twister, is a purchase or investment that demonstrates non-obvious affiliation with a social class or cultural group, or an investment that is worth significant financial, lifestyle, or wellness value. Great. So pulling that right from the text. Okay, great job. Do you have any questions about Currid Halkett's definition? It is a little bit bulky, this definition. Okay, how is an affiliation non-obvious, or how do we demonstrate something non-obvious? That's a great question. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit later, but for now, can you think of some other examples of ways that we demonstrate things in a non-obvious way? I'll let you think about that. Right, totally. Maybe there are some other cultural signifiers that we use to demonstrate things in non-obvious ways without saying them aloud. These might be some clues as to where we're from, where we grew up, what we like to do for fun. Right, for example, I used to dance professionally and I used to carry myself around with this incredible posture, right? And so I'm not really telling anyone verbally I'm a dancer, but you can kind of tell. So that's one example of how we might demonstrate something non-obviously. But there are a lot of other ways that we do this culturally and socially. Okay. Feeling better about that? Great. So, meritocracy is our next word. You've heard this word before, right? Okay, great. Can you give me your definition? Okay, great. So a government system or a selection process when people are chosen based on their abilities and skills. And this is a system you're saying that is just and it's fair. Great. This is a great definition. The part that I think works especially for this text is people are chosen based on their abilities or skills. And I think something interesting actually is that the author Courage Halkett is going to question a little bit the fairness of this system or whether or not a meritocracy exists at all. That's part of her argument. Is there any word hidden inside of the word meritocracy? Words that can give us, or parts of the word that can give us clues about what it means? Yes, exactly. Merit, and then ocracy. Ocracy often referring to a government system, for example, democracy or aristocracy, and then merit, as we've just defined, relating to one's skills or abilities. Great. Okay, so our next vocabulary word is bifurcated. Have you heard this word before? Okay, I actually haven't heard this in a really long time. It is a little bit of a challenging word. It's a little unusual. So how can we break down this word to make it a little bit easier for us? Let's look at the word. Do we see anything in there? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it starts with the prefix bi. And what do we know about the prefix bi? Exactly. It means two or half or both. And so let's also find out what context is she using this in. I see it on page 50, on the top of page 50 in the second paragraph. Courage Halkett writes, inconspicuous consumption thus takes two forms, almost bifurcated. Cost of information in conspicuous consumption and cost prohibitive in conspicuous consumption. Oh my gosh, talk about vocabulary word. Blah, blah, blah. So, in this context, and she's listing these two forms of consumption. So, what does that tell us about the word bifurcated? You can even see what I'm doing with my hands. Yes, exactly. This word means divided into two parts or making two things. Are there any other words that we could use to replace bifurcated just for our own understanding? Nice. Yeah, I would say separated or divided, but those are also great words. Are there any other questions that you have for this vocab before we move on? Nope? Okay. So now that we have a better understanding of these vocabulary words, let's take a look at the multiple choice questions. Can you please read them aloud to me with the answers, A through D? That will give us a better sense of what we're looking for in the text. So these two questions, the first says, which of the following are examples of inconspicuous consumption? So this question tells us that we're looking for something, and then it lists 4 examples: expensive car with brand name logo, international vacation travel, designer shoes, and ski lessons. Great. And the question says, which of the following are, which tells us that we're going to select multiple examples from this question. The second question asks, what does Currit Halkett cite as one of the dominant ethics of contemporary American society? Okay, I personally think these questions are a little bit harder because they're asking big picture questions about themes present in the text. The options that we have for this one are A, purchasing goods is important. B, education is important. C, leisure is important. And D, working hard and acquiring knowledge is important. Cool. So now that we've read through those, let's just keep them in the back of our mind as we summarize the text. Okay, so let's summarize the paragraph on page 49. This is the paragraph that starts with, the rise in inconspicuous consumption is a result of 3 important trends. Can you summarize this paragraph for me in maybe 3 to 4 sentences? It can be in your own words, and it doesn't have to be super technical. Great, thanks for that summary. So your summary tells me about the first 2 causes of inconspicuous consumption listed in this paragraph. Did you catch the point about the third cause? Okay, yeah, a little tricky. So the third cause is later on in the paragraph on page 50. Let me take a look at it now. And so here, Halkett is saying that the third cause of inconspicuous consumption is in a post-recession economy, material possessions are seen as less valuable than investments such as education, experiences such as vacations or traveling, healthcare, and retirement funds. And these are often all resources which are privatized, which means you have to pay quite a bit of money to get to them, especially the more high quality resources. So in summary, if you could create one sentence to summarize this whole paragraph on page 49, what would you say? Yeah, exactly. Basically, we're seeing a shift in what people consider to be valuable in terms of the purchases and investments that they make. Exactly. People's values are changing around their spending. Do you have any questions about this paragraph so far? Great question. So the question was, what exactly makes this kind of spending inconspicuous if maybe your friends or your family members know how you've spent your money? That's a good question. I think the point that Currit Halkett is making here is that in order for an investment or purchase to qualify as inconspicuous consumption, it has to be kind of difficult to know about or to replicate. So there's a great quote on the bottom of page 50 that I think explains this very well. She says, "The key to most all inconspicuous consumption is that it's non-visible," means you can't see it, "except to those who already are in the know. And it's often difficult to emulate without tacit information, specific information, or a significant amount of money." So another way to look at this is knowing about kinds of inconspicuous consumption or being able to purchase or invest in them is kind of like having the passcode to a secret door, or knowing Yes, kind of like having a secret passcode. And so it's a kind of knowledge that is shared, but you have to be in a very particular financial or social position in order to know what the password is. Does that make sense? Great. So now that we have a better understanding of the text, let's go back to those multiple choice questions. The first one was, which of the following are examples of inconspicuous consumption? What do you think the answer is here? A, expensive car with brand name logo, B, international vacation travel, C, designer shoes, or D, ski lessons? They all sound nice, right? Yeah. So, okay, great. So your answers are B, international vacation travel, and D, ski lessons. I agree. Those are the choices that I would choose as well. Why did you not choose expensive car with brand name logo or designer shoes? Right, exactly. They're obvious. These are ways that if we were maybe to purchase this cool new bag or this cool new car, other people would see it and think, obviously this person spent a lot of money. Yeah, exactly. But something like an international vacation or ski lessons are a little bit more hidden. Great job. And let's look at the following question. What does Courage Halkett cite as one of the dominant ethics of contemporary American society? What's an ethic? Or an ethical system? Or what does it mean if something is ethical? Right, exactly. So when she uses the word ethics here, she's talking about a value system. Things that as a culture or as a society we think are important, things that we agree upon, things that we believe. Great. And so our options are A, purchasing goods is important. B, education is important. C, leisure is important. Or D, working hard and acquiring knowledge is important. What do you think about this one? Okay, not so sure. So let's do a little bit of process of elimination to figure out which are our best fits. So what do we think about A? It says purchasing goods is important. Does that fit into a value system of American society? Yeah, I agree. I agree that it actually is an important part of American culture, an important part of the American economy. Material goods, buying material goods. So, but we're not sure if this is like the best answer. So let's keep that on the dashboard. Maybe A. B, education is important. Is this a dominant ethic of contemporary American society? Yeah, for sure, maybe. Although something else that I would remember is that earlier in the text, Courage Halkett talks about how the American education system actually has many problems, and maybe it's not one of the financial priorities of our country. Okay, so it sounds like not B. C, leisure is important. And remember, this is not our own value systems. This is Courage Halkett's perspective on American society. Does Courage Halkett think that leisure is important to America? No. I agree. And then D, does Courage Halkett believe that working hard and acquiring knowledge is important to contemporary American society? Yes. Okay, great. So it sounds like we're choosing between A, purchasing goods, and D, working hard. I totally agree with you. I think for this question, working hard and acquiring knowledge is important because this is referencing the meritocracy and that Courage Halkett centers in this argument. Okay, so great job today. We'll get to the rest of the multiple choice questions next time. Do you have any lingering questions about what we've covered? No? Okay, sounds great. Send me the writing for next week. And you did a great job. We'll talk about this more next time. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye.